This is Countdown to the Grey Cup with Bill Kelly, delivered by Purolator on the Ticats Audio Network.
And welcome to another edition of Countdown to the Grey Cup, delivered by Purolator. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. We are getting ever closer to the festival, to the game itself, and of course, in a lot of activities. And it's been our pleasure over the last little while to start talking about some of the things that are going on off the football field. And it's going to be quite a time, of course, with the festival. And to talk about that, Paige Ottaviano is with us. Now, she is the manager of the Grey Cup Festival and Events. A very busy lady over the last little while. Thanks for taking some time for us today.
Well, Bill, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, we've talked about some of the headlines, shall we say, about what's happening here. About Green Day for the halftime show and Carrie Underwood and so many other great acts. And, of course, Shaggy's going to be at the awards dinner down at Fallsview Casino. But we want to emphasize that as great as these things are, and they are all fabulous, an awful lot of the stuff that's going to be happening during the festival is free of charge. Just go and have a good time, isn't it?
Yes, and we're so excited for all of that. You know, we have our Fan Central James Street happening right downtown Hamilton, iconic James Street North, that is going to be filled with free activities down there. And, you know, right in the center of all of that is the John Foote Armoury, which isn't open to the public at all, and it's going to be transformed into the Canadian Armed Forces Fan Zone. And we'll also have the Telus Kick for Good courtyard out there as well. So there's really something for everyone. Well,
here's the thing, and I'll get to the Armory in a second. And people in the Hamilton area would be familiar with Superqual, of course. It's become almost a national event now. Started off as a little thing that happened on Fridays, and it was about 2 blocks long, and now it runs the whole length of James Street every year. And it's the mastermind, I guess, of Tim Podesic from Sonic Onion, who put this thing together, and he's on your team. I mean, he's first of all a huge Tiger Cat fan. He's a season ticket holder. You see Tim at the games all the time. But he wanted to jump in here and do some work on this, and this is really kind of a Grey Cup super call, isn't it? That's going to be happening on James Street.
It is, and I think that's one of the best things about Hamilton is bringing in individuals and businesses who have established events throughout the city that we can partner with to run one of the best street festivals that the Grey Cup has seen. And I think it was a no-brainer to bring in Tim and Lisa and Penny from Sonic Onion to help us execute what Supercrawl does on such a huge level. So we've tapped into their expertise and their leadership to help us with the street and execute something as successful as Supercrawl does.
Well, and it's fabulous. I mean, as I say, Hamilton is a hot music scene, has been for many, many years, and Tim is the catalyst, I guess, to kind of bring those acts to us on a consistent basis with Supercrawl. So you're right, it's a great idea. It's a masterstroke to say, hey, let's get involved in this. And while we've got these fabulous acts like Green Day and Carrie Underwood and Shaggy, international superstars all, what we're going to do at the festival, especially down on James Street, we're going to feature a lot of local bands, but these are all local bands that have made a name for themselves. I mean, some of the names very familiar to us, people like Monster Truck and Dwayne Gretzky and others, but what do you got, over 40 bands that are going to be booked during this thing?
Yeah, so again, bringing Tim into this, music being a huge thing, we wanted music to be a huge part of our Grey Cup Festival as well. And we will have the James Street Music Stage at the corner of York and James at the one beginning of the Street Festival. And we will have music playing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from when the event opens at 11 a.m. till when it closes at 8 p.m. But we will have over 40 Canadian bands that will be playing throughout those 3 days. So we're super excited to bring in the local talent, the Canadian talent, to help enhance what will be there already.
Now, I've been lucky enough to attend a number of Grey Cups over the last number of years, and they all do a great job, whether it's Winnipeg, Calgary, Ottawa, whatever, Toronto, but they've all some restrictions to it. I mean, Winnipeg is just awfully cold there at Grey Cup time, but they did a fabulous job, and it's all indoors because of the weather. And we're going to have some great indoor events too. But what's nice about this is that the outdoor events are going to be big. And I haven't been to a festival. I guess maybe the 100th anniversary of the Grey Cup, which was in Toronto some years ago. They closed off a good deal of front streets, and they did some events, but no entertainment things. They had, bouncy castles and things like that, and that was kind of cute. Not for me, but for other people that wanted to go to that thing. But your guys are going in full bore into this thing with entertainment up and down the street. One of the nice things about going to Grey Cup, and people that have attended in the past would understand this, is that you can just wander up and down and run into somebody from Regina, somebody from Calgary, somebody from Ottawa who was in town for the event. And they're all saying, well, where can we go for a good time? Well, the answer is pretty short here. It's go to James Street. That's where it's all happening, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like you said, we have so many things going on, and we're trying to capitalize everything that Hamilton has and put it on a great stage, and music is the perfect example. So we have music going all day, and that will be complemented by a beer garden right there. Down the street we'll have 6 local food trucks that we're bringing in from the ones that Supercrawl has. We're bringing in a few of those. We're going to have a Christmas market vendor set up. So if anyone wants to get some of their Christmas presents a bit early, we'll be doing that. And then we have a lot of our great partners activating throughout the street festival. So, from that walk from York and James down to Barton and James with the festival footprint, there's a lot of different things you can experience as you walk down James Street.
And the merchants is going to be, are going to be a big part of this too. Local merchants, as you say, you can get some shopping done for this, that, and the other thing, and some other stuff too. I mean, you get into this and you kind of get into the spirit of things, right? I mean, just about every festival we've gone to, I end up coming home with some Grey Cup merch or Tiger Cat merch or whatever, because all that stuff's going to be available. They're going to be out there selling it at ridiculously low prices, by the way. I should warn you. So, bring your Visa cards with you, or your Interac or whatever you want to do for that sort of thing. I want to swing back and talk a little bit about the armories too, because that's going to be a major part of this. And you're absolutely right, Paige. I think even people from Hamilton have probably walked by or driven by that place a million times in their lives and figure, what's going on in there? It's fascinating. It's a huge place that covers a great deal of area. There's an outdoor parade area that you can't see from the street. There's an indoor. They used to run a track meet there. The spectator track meet every year used to be at the armories down there, because it holds an awful lot of people. And it's going to hold an awful lot of people Grey Cup week too, isn't it? Because you've got a lot of activities going on in there.
Yeah, and we're so thankful to the Canadian Armed Forces wanting to be a part of the festival, and again, embracing what Hamilton has to offer and embracing us. So they've been a huge part in this plan. So we're using their facilities to create the Canadian Armed Forces fan zone, as well as the Tell Us Kick for Good courtyard. So, again, open to anyone and everyone, free of charge. And inside we'll have, an Armed Forces obstacle course. We'll have some football activations that some of our partners are sponsoring, so kids or adults can all try out. And we're doing some CFL alumni signings with some alumni as well as some Hall of Fame members, which will be great. And I think one of the biggest things and most exciting things that will be in there is our turf football fields. We're running the Hamilton Flag Football Classic, which engages youth throughout the community in different regions. And we're going to be running one tournament a day. So Thursday we'll have a tournament, Friday we'll have one, and Saturday. And it's, male, female, different age groups, but it's a massive football field inside of the Armory, and we're trying to create that that mini Tim Hortons field experience for these kids, so that not only do they remember the Grey Cup, but they remember being a part of it with this Hamilton Flag Football Classic. So that's all indoors. And then once you make your way outside to the courtyard, that's where TELUS is doing their Kick for Good courtyard. And we'll have some kicking activations out there, as well as TELUS's own activation with some hot chocolate, some other giveaways, and just some integration with them.
It's going to be an awful lot of fun, and as I say, that's going to be one of the central parts of the experience during Grey Cup week. Grey Cup Central down on James Street. But don't forget about the entertainment, the vendors that are going to be happening. You mentioned about the alumni signings, and this is something that amazed me over the Grey Cups that I've attended in the past. Leo Ezerins, our good friend Leo, of course, is the big cheese patty, of course, for the CFL Alumni Association, and they do an outstanding job of getting people to come to the Grey Cup. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of Tiger Cat alumni there. You see them at the games at Tim Hortons Field and others. But you're going to see also great superstars from days past. From Calgary, from BC, places like that, and they're available, and they're fabulous people, and they'll have their jerseys on just so you can identify. Oh yeah, because they don't look like usually they don't look like they did in their playing days.
Right.
But they're happy to sign autographs, happy to sit and chew the fat about their times in the CFL, and it's always a great time just to get together with some of these folks, and of course, get the selfie done with them too. So it's one of these things where you got to plan an afternoon or maybe 2 or 3 afternoons down on James Street because you're going to be there for a while because there's just so much to see and do.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing that's also a great event that's free is our Hamilton Santa Claus and Grey Cup Parade presented by WeatherTech, which we've been working with the Hamilton Santa Claus Parade Committee, and they have moved up their date to Grey Cup weekend, which is Saturday, November 18th. And the route that they're taking will actually encompass James Street. So that will happen Saturday morning from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., but it will go all around our street festival. So that's just another thing to plan for in the morning to watch. And then after that, you can experience the fan zone, the courtyard, as well as James Street.
It's going to be a blast, and we're really looking forward to it. You guys have done an incredible job putting this together, and I still recall talking with Matt Affanack and some of the other folks involved in the Grey Cup Festival from a couple of years ago when the game was here, and it was limited because of, well, we know about the COVID situation and restrictions and things of this nature, but Matt always said, he says, you just wait 2 years, and he says, no holds barred, we're going to really just knock you off your chair, and you guys have done an incredible job putting this whole thing together. It's one thing to conceptualize it, but to actually make this thing work the way you guys are doing is just outstanding.
Yeah, no, and thank you. We appreciate that. And I think, Matt's words are true and true. It's going to be a festival like no one has ever experienced. And I think, again, that's the great work from our team here, as well as a lot of community partners like Tim and others that we've brought in to help enhance the whole experience for everyone that comes into town that weekend.
And the volunteers, of course, are a big part of that. But kudos also, because I don't think we mentioned this enough, to the city of Hamilton for actually the work that they're doing on this. I mean, we're closing down a major artery here for the week, essentially. There's a lot of other events, the parade itself and so many other things. And as I've found talking to people like yourself, Paige, and others that are involved in this, the response from the city has always been, what can we do? What can we do to help? Because they want to make this thing work. And it's just great to see that kind of collaboration, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's what you need for a successful Grey Cup game and a Grey Cup festival. You want the people who are going to support you and help you through and kind of all have that same vision for an ultimate success for the city and for the team.
Absolutely. We're just about out of time on this segment of the program, but just maybe the finishing thing is, if they want to get more details about this and even some of the bands and when they're going to be there, I guess the webpage is the best place to go, isn't it?
Yeah, I would check that out, greatcupfestival.ca. And I know our social channels also post a lot of information there, so you can find us on Instagram or X as well.
Excellent stuff. Paige, I know we'll see you at all these events over the next couple of days, but thanks for taking some time out of your busy day to talk to us about this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Paige Ottaviano, of course, is running an awful lot of these outside events, and she's managing this. So check out the webpage and of course, when and times for the parade and for some of the bands and everything else. Lots more coming up on the countdown to the Grey Cup, and we'll give you some more players, including a CFL great, a Hall of Famer on this program. Stick around.
A second half, and Adrion Smith faked a pinball, and he finds some room up that side again. Adrion Smith past McCallum, foot race, and Adrion Smith's going to win it. Touchdown, Toronto, 95 yards. And Dickinson looking deep, incomplete, intended for G. Roy Simon. Adrion Smith in coverage.
Shea draws the first major penalty of the game.
A minute 22 away from the Argos claiming the ultimate prize in Canadian football.
Hey, this is the beauty. McManus is going to throw just a curl route in the zone. The ball bounces right off Darren's chest as he's trying to slide on his back to make the catch, and Adrion Smith scores. But the beauty of the Canadian Football League is you're never out of it.
Good to have you with us here on Countdown to the Grey Cup, delivered by Purolator. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. My favorite part of the show, I love talking about the upcoming events and the festival itself, because it's going to be a blast, of course, as you've already found out later on in Hamilton. But I love talking to the guys that were on the gridiron, the guys that played these games for many, many years. And we've had an awful lot of fun reminiscing about some of those. And looking forward to our conversation with this week's guest, too. He is a four-time All-Star, three-time Grey Cup champion. And Adrion Smith joins us, and former Tiger Cat, former Toronto Argonaut, and of course, a little bit of time in the Canadian Football League, U.S. style, too, and I want to talk about that. Adrion, great to have you with us today. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me, and what I was saying is six-time All-Star.
Six? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Not your fault.
I was Talk to us a little bit about the transition, because I was always fascinated. You had a great college career, too. And I've talked to quarterbacks, guys like Dunnigan and Danny Mack and people like that played the game here. And they said, first time an American quarterback comes up here and looks at the size of the field, they're saying, what the hell? It's bigger. There's an extra guy playing defense. But as a DB, you've got to make some adjustments to the bigger field, too, didn't you, when you came up here?
100%. I tell you what, that out route to the wide side is a long run. and when you think you've undercut it as a cornerback, and then notice that, oh my, there's another 5 yards, 10 yards out there, it feels like you're running for days. So yes, a very big adjustment.
Well, Danny told me that too when he came up here, and he says, that out route, he says, that's a 40-yard pass. Yeah. It may go 2 yards that way, but it's going 40 yards that way. And you're humping up there trying to keep up with that guy.
And a lot of quarterbacks don't have the arm strength to get it out there. So
yeah, exactly. Well, that's good for you, though, isn't it?
It is good for me, but it could be bad too.
But you obviously made the adjustments. You had an outstanding career coming up here with the Tiger Cats. And playing with some of the guys that we've been talking with over the last couple of years. Interesting, when I had Dunnigan on, Matt was on with us just a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about this transition, of course, when the American teams came in. And you were one of the guys that went back down there. And as I'm looking at your bio here, Greg Mons plays a big part in what you did and where you did it for the last little while. Outstanding coach, and people in Hamilton, of course, would remember Greg. But he was a big influence on you, wasn't he?
Greg Mons was a very huge influence on me. Obviously, in 1994, he was the GM for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and the Tiger Cats had my rights, my negotiation rights, so he's the one that brought me up to Canada in 94. Subsequently, he was the GM for the Memphis Mad Dogs in 95, so he traded for me to come to Memphis in 95. Then also, he got the general manager job in Toronto in 96. So when I was a free agent, he brought me up to Toronto in 96. And then obviously I spent all my years in Toronto. But I would tell you a little known fact.
What's that?
After I went to 96, 97, I stayed with Toronto. In 98, I had a trial with the Buffalo Bills. And that didn't work out, and I ended up coming back to Toronto. Little known fact is Greg Mons actually had a contract for me when he was in the BC Lions. And
oh yeah.
And so I had made a deal with Don Matthews to come back to Toronto, and a day later, Brendan Tannen was the general manager for BC. He was supposed to get with me a day before Toronto got with me, but he went off on vacation or something, and he didn't offer me the contract that he was supposed to offer me. So I didn't get that information until the day after I signed with Toronto, and Toronto played BC that very first game that I came back, and Greg Mons came to me and said, "What are you doing? I gave you the contract that you want." I said, Brandon never contacted me, so I never knew what the contract offer was. So if I would have got the offer, I probably would have been with BC and been with Greg Mons in BC at that time, too.
Well, I don't know how many. You got the Argo Grey Cups, and I guess everything happens for a reason, or maybe things don't happen for a reason sometimes, right? So you had some great years in Toronto, of course, Grey Cup champions in. I want to talk about the '96 game in a second, because I know that was a big game for you guys, and I think one of the great Argo teams of all time. You guys were stacked. You had Flutie, you had Jimmy Cunningham, you had that Morelli guy as a wideout. You had. And his cousin, of course, that Masadi guy turned out to be a pretty good football player, too. But on defense, you guys were just awesome through that year, weren't you?
We had some pretty good guys on defense too. We had Tim Cofield, we had Ed Berry, we had Alex Gordon, we had Rob Waldrop, Andrew Stewart, Mike O'Shea, Reggie Givens. The list goes on and on. So we were just as good defensively as we were offensively. Obviously, offense, gets people in the stands, but defense wins championships. And we didn't have that stacked defense. Like we weren't. The great thing about that team was we knew we were going to score. It's just a matter of how many points we were going to score. And that allowed us to be more aggressive on defense, because even if you made a mistake on defense, the other team scored, you knew that Foote was going to get those scores back 9 out of 10 times. So we were playing with no pressure behind us and didn't have to worry about what the offense was going to do. So we were pretty confident, and we played with no pressure.
You mentioned Tim Caulfield, a great player, great rush end, made life hell for an awful lot of quarterbacks in the CFL. He came up here with you, didn't he?
100%. In 1994, he was at Hamilton when I was in Hamilton. He was in Hamilton before me. So he's actually from Kansas City, where I'm from. So he played with the Chiefs for a couple of years and then made a home in Kansas City. So him and my dad were actually friends. They actually worked out at the same place, at the same gym. And he said, my son got a contract with the Ticats. And so he's like, okay, he can drive up with me then. So we drove together in 94. We drove together in Memphis in 95. And we drove together in 96 and to Toronto in 96. So yeah, he was a very big influence on me.
He's a brother. You guys have a lot of common interests, and it certainly worked out great for both of you in situations like this. You mentioned, the changes you had to make here, playing defensive back up here in Canada, and you were a great cover guy. I mean, that was one of your real strengths. So you had that ability to pivot and be quick out there. Again, talking to one of your old buddies, Rob Hitchcock. I know Rob and Mike Morreale, of course, do the show here on the Ticat Audio Network. And I saw the interview you guys did, by the way, at the beginning of the summer. Let me put it this way, for people watching this podcast, check it out, okay? It's on the webpage still, and it's an awful lot of, you guys had a lot of fun. Talking. When
you have guys that have similar personalities and similar ideologies and play together and all that stuff, even though we don't talk to each other a lot, it just goes back to the beginning. It's like you pick up where you left off, and they were great teammates. And obviously I didn't play with Rob, but ended up getting to know him throughout the years, playing rivalries and stuff like that. And again, all-star safety, so it's had the same position in common and so close between Hamilton and Toronto, so we interacted, going out at night and things of that sort. So when people respect you and what you do, and you respect them and what they do, it's easy to have banter like that back and forth. Even though it's fun and it's joking and stuff like that, it's just fun to do because we have that much respect for one another.
Well, and he was mentioning at that time, and I've talked to him since I've known Rob for 1,000 years. He says, Sudsy, Don Southern, of course, his defensive coach at the time when he got up here. He says he's trying to get me. He says I'm not a cover guy. I don't ask me to cover because I just bloody well can't do it. I mean, once the guy got the ball, look out, Hitch was going to knock him into next week. Right. But you had that. You were a cover guy. You had that speed. You had to be fast and quick, didn't you?
I'm gonna say this: Sudsy was another big influence on me, and me and Eric Carter. So me and Eric Carter, we were both rookies together in 1994. And the starting corners there were Corus Irvin and Gary Wilkerson at the time. And something happened to them at the same time where me and Eric Carter were rookies, and we started on each corner after the 4th game of the season. And Sudsy brought us in the office. He said, you know what? You all are 2 young guys, but I have faith in you all. And I know that you all can do some things out there, so go out there and just have fun and do what you came here to do. And him having confidence in me and myself and Eric, me and Eric actually talked about this not too long ago. Him having confidence in us was a big influence on us playing for the Ticats. And Eric subsequently had a great 2 years with Hamilton and then went on to San Francisco and then came back. Yeah. I unfortunately, went to Memphis because Greg traded for me and whatnot. But Sudsy is a very big influence and very big reason, just as much as Greg Monzi is why I'm in this league also.
Well, Sudsy always had this great ability, didn't he, to assess talent. I mean, he was a great player in his own right.
Yes, correct.
But making those changes with putting you 2 guys at the corner, he's really the guy that made Joe Monford the player he was. I mean, Joe came up here as a linebacker, and Sudsy says, "You're a rush end, buddy," and that worked out pretty well for him, didn't it?
First of all, Sudsy was a defensive back, so he actually knew how to play the position, so he knew that talent. Another Joe Monford story: me and Joe Monford were actually in Cleveland Browns training camp in 1994. So we were roommates. So I knew Joe Monford from 94 also. But, yes, Suzy had the eye in order to transition people and use their strengths from linebacker to defensive line for Joe Montford. And, of course, he had his Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, incredible. And the stories, they're so interwoven. It's like you talk to guys like you and some of the other folks we've talked to over the last number of weeks here, and it's like, okay, you play for Hamilton, you play for Toronto, you play for Montreal, but there's within that, and you compete, and you're butting heads all through the afternoon or the evening or whatever it is, but there's a brotherhood there too, isn't it? I mean, you guys all have history, and you all understand, hey, we're doing the same thing. I'm getting a paycheck from that guy, you're getting a paycheck from this guy, but it's football, and that kind of unites you, doesn't it?
It does unite you, just as the locker room unites you, right? And again, paths cross all the time. I was fortunate to be in one city for 10 years. Hitchcock was in one city his whole career. Morreale was back and forth and in the same city, but also, people go to other rival teams, and you still play with those guys, but you still have that relationship with them, even though they go to another team. And that's, like I said, that's where the respect comes from, where, you know what, we've had great memories together, but you know what, right now we're going to compete against each other to the highest level and hope for nobody gets hurt. And then at the end of the game, we're going to go out and have a beer together, see each other again, and wish the best for each other moving on, because nobody wants to see anybody, lose their career to a catastrophic injury or something bad or anything like that. But we also play the game to the highest level and with the highest respect that, we can do those things when we play for other teams.
I want to ask you about 96. It was a very special year for you guys, certainly. But even in Hamilton, the Grey Cup was back in Hamilton for the first time in, God, I don't know how many years. And we were all looking forward to it, and they made a big move in the offseason, and they signed Matt Dunnigan. And he was going to be the guy. We were going to be the home team, and we were going to win the Grey Cup in 96. It didn't work out that way, as you remember. I was the public address announcer. I was the stadium announcer that year for 13 years. And I'm watching the game, and they were playing BC, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this 1,000 times. And it was a linebacker blitz, and Matt never saw the guy. And I wanted to turn the mic on and say, look out. I did, sadly, because he got nailed, and I don't think he ever never played another down of football, but that kind of killed the season. But it was a great season for you guys. You had a great regular season. We talked about the star-studded cast you had. And you're warming up there, you're into the Grey Cup, and you're going to play Ronnie Lancaster and the Edmonton Eskimos. Danny Mack is the quarterback. You got Flutie on that team, too. There's a lot of guys going on and a lot of action going on. I know you practiced all week. Saturday evening, you guys are, okay, tuck in. We're going to a big game tomorrow. You wake up Sunday morning, and it's snowing and snowing and snowing. And you got to figure, well, that changes everything. And but it didn't. That turned out to, notwithstanding the fact that the weather was crap, I think one of the most exciting Grey Cups of all time.
It was a very exciting Grey Cup. It was a high-scoring Grey Cup, and it was a game of very big plays. And I don't think those plays would have happened if it was on optimal surfaces. Because the footing wasn't quite good in all situations. Obviously, Eddie Brown caught the touchdown on me that went off through his hands and off his toe and then up in the air, and I'm sliding in the snow. Then Jimmy Cunningham comes back with a punt return touchdown, and he finds the dry track to the end zone through the snow. And then Sandusky catches the ball between the two Smiths, Donald Smith and Lester Smith, and they run into each other. So it's like Keystone Cops. Sometimes, as we were playing, but those big plays wouldn't have happened unless it was snow. But those big plays were significant in how the game turned out, because Darren Flutie ends up slipping and falling, and the ball ricochets off him and into my arms, and I ended up having the game-winning touchdown. So I don't think we would have had a game like that if it wasn't the conditions that it was.
That had to be sweet, though, because you mentioned that. You talk about highs and lows in athletics. You were there. You were the guy on Eddie Brown. And you must have thought that you're looking at this and say, what, are you kidding me? It goes through his hands, it hits his thigh, and he picks it up and goes in and says, give you a break. But you at the end of the day, of course, you got back. You were the guy with the winning touchdown. It was just back and forth all evening, wasn't it?
It was back and forth all evening. And even though that bad play happened, like, nobody was down, nobody, got on my case or anything. Everybody was like, hey, pick it up, you make a play that helps us out. And the funny thing about it is my parents were in the stands at that game also.
Oh, yeah?
And so that was, pretty good, that they were there. So that was, that they get to see the game and everything. But my father was telling me, I was talking through you telepathically, like, let it go, keep going. It's going to be a long game. And then subsequently I get the game-winning touchdown. And so that made it all the best for him. And I know me and him, after that game, we smoked a cigar together.
Excellent. We talked about the other Grey Cups, and, of course, 97. and 2004, which was kind of a special year for the Argos too. There are so many guys that play in this league that never get to the big game. And you guys, well, you were repeaters, 96 and 97, back-to-back Grey Cups. That doesn't happen very often. That must have meant a lot to you.
It does mean a lot, and it's the second season makes it a little bit harder because the first game of the year, the 97, we lost to Saskatchewan, the very first game of the year. And people don't realize, especially when you have a team like that, like we did, and then pretty much everybody came back, or you knew you were going to be the favorites going into that next season. We're playing 18 Grey Cups every single game, right? Everybody's giving their best. We're playing 18 Grey Cups. So by the time we get to the Grey Cup, like we're pretty exhausted because we played everybody's best up until that point, right? So, playing 18 Grey Cups that season and then playing the actual Grey Cup, I mean, obviously you still got Flutie there, so your chances are pretty good, and we also got a pretty good defense that year also. But getting everybody's best game in and game out really prepared us for that Grey Cup and ended up being a blowout that particular year.
I got to ask you about one of your teammates from that team that's still kicking around the league and not doing too badly, and that's Mike O'Shea. Mike went to Guelph, started his career with the Tiger Cats, of course, went back and forth up. I think he went up and down the highway 3 or 4 times. Ticats, Argos, back to the Ticats, back to the Argos, and had a great playing career. Did you see him as a guy who was going to go on to coaching? 100,000%.
I mean, he was a coach when he was playing. I played 10 out of my 12 years with O'Shea. So between Ticats and the Argonauts. And the attention to detail that he has, the way he prepares for a game, day in, day out, practice day in and day out. Our last 5 years in Toronto, give or take, he was coaching then. When Stubler was there, he was coaching. When Matthew was there, he was coaching. So he was definitely a student of the game. So by no surprise was this, that he's a head coach and that he's a successful head coach.
And still doing great. And I know everybody I talk to says he's a player's coach. I sense that too, and I watched you guys play on the same team, both the Argos and the Ticats. He had that respect. I mean, he was the guy, and there was a passion there that I guess it must have been infectious for all of you guys.
I think a lot of us were self-motivated, but definitely, I can tell for the younger guys, there's one thing you didn't want to do. You didn't want to get on O'Shea's bad side. You didn't want O'Shea calling you out for effort or not knowing your assignment, because this guy put his body through the ringer. He had so many surgeries. He played through so many injuries, ACLs, back. I mean, I've seen him in the training room the day after a game, the day before the game, getting his body as well prepared as possible to play the entire game. And one thing you cannot do when someone like that, when your leader is doing stuff like that, and you're not doing stuff like that, there's going to be a problem. He's going to call you out for it. So assignment, always ready. Effort, always ready. And I tell you what, O'Shea never came off the field. And O'Shea would be pissed if a coach tried to take him off the field. And O'Shea took special teams more important, believe it or not. He was more invested in special teams than he was as a defensive player, right? So that tells you the type of integrity that he had. That tells you the type of passion he had. And that tells you what he would do for his teammates to get the best possible outcome for the game for a win.
Which I guess is reflected in the fact that his first job with the Argos was special teams coach when they finally brought him onto the staff. And of course, they had an incredible special teams unit as a result of that. He's just got that passion. I want to mention to our viewers here on the podcast, you're still kicking around. You've lived in the area. You've raised your kids here. You've got all 3 of your kids are very athletic, very gifted, and have accomplished an awful lot. The son is one of the reasons why you're still seeing around Tim Horton Field an awful lot of the time. And of course, we're talking about a guy who I think has made a huge impression on this football team. That's Adrion Smith, who played at University of Guelph and has turned out to be a pretty darn good professional football player. But I've been told that you would prefer that he played another sport when he was going through college, didn't you?
I did, and truth be told, football was a total accident for me. So I was a baseball guy growing up. I played baseball and basketball growing up. Not that I didn't play football in the streets. I just never played organized football. So
sure, yeah.
So I was a pretty good baseball player and got recruited to play baseball at some high Division I schools. And the school No, my last year in high school, me and a buddy of mine decided to skip basketball conditioning just to play football, right? So like we hated to run. Let's just go play football, skip basketball conditioning. Long story short, I led the state of Missouri in interceptions and ended up getting a scholarship to play football. The school that I went to, Missouri State University, was the only school that said I could play football and baseball. So I said, great. They're giving me a full scholarship. My parents will have to pay for school. I'll play baseball. So, but football and baseball. I got redshirted my first year, and the baseball and the football team said I couldn't go play baseball because they didn't know what I could do. Long story short, again, I ended up being an All-American and playing football, and the Hamilton Ticats called me. Now, I did put my son in baseball, and Keandre was a very, very good baseball player. He was a left-handed thrower, left-handed hitter, best defensive center fielder I've ever seen at his age. And I'm not just saying that because he's my son. I'm saying it because it's the truth. The best defensive center fielder I've ever seen. And he actually played with Josh Naylor and Bo Naylor, who are now with the Cleveland Indians. So he played with So he played in the Mississauga North organization with those guys. So he's known them, grown up with them, played with them the whole 9 yards. So we had pretty good little league teams growing up. So he said obviously he's around football. He was in the locker room all the time with me and things like that. He, Steinauer was, knew him since he was little and everything. So he knew everybody, knew football. So he said, I want to play football. I want to play football. So I didn't believe that there was good coaching at that time. So I didn't want him to get hurt unnecessarily, get a concussion or something like that would deter him from playing. So I said, you know what? You can't play till you're 13. Leave me alone. Don't ask me again. So he played baseball and basketball all throughout the years. January 3rd, 2013. His birthday is January 3rd, 2013. He comes down the stairs and he says, you said I could play football when I was 13. I want to play football. The rest is history.
And what a history it's been too. It's got to be pride, and I know you're proud of all of your kids and their accomplishments. But to sit and see this guy and the way he's developed as a pro over the last little while, and you and I know, I mean, you've been in the league for a long, long time. It's tough for Canadian guys to crack the lineup. I mean, you make the team that first year, you invariably say, okay, I'm going to play special teams. I may get in a couple of plays through the course of the game. But I guess it's really up to the individual, and Keandre's a great example of that, to say, I'm going to make the best of every situation they give me. They throw me in there, I'm going to make an impact. And he's done that since he's been a Tiger Cat.
He has done that, and like you said, he cut his teeth, on the special teams, and he did that the first 6, 7, 8 games, and he got an opportunity to start, 5 or 6 games after that, and then, was in spot duty there for, at the end of the year, the first year, and then all of this year he started every game this year. So, very proud of him. He's a very confident individual. I don't interfere with anything. I don't, hey, Stein, hey, why is this happening? I don't do that. I never have done that, never will do that. But, I keep my pulse on everything that's going on. And I've had conversations with Ed Hervey, the general manager. Obviously, we played against each other and have a mutual respect for one another. And he's like, you know what? We're giving him a little bit at a time. He told me, in the draft that year, he said, I feel that we got the steal of the draft in the receiver department that year. He said, the Philpott brothers were, 1 and 2, and everybody was very high on them, and understandably so. He said, but I think Keandre was the steal of the draft. And I'm not just saying that because we got him, but, I kept my eye on him the whole time. And he said, we're giving him a little bit at a time. He's proven that he can, take a little bit more and accept a little bit more, and to the point where this year he's done very well for himself. All through that, he hasn't been injured and stayed on the game, stayed on the field. That's important. So, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, so I'm proud of him for that.
Well, it's a joy to watch the guy, and it's as a proud papa, I know how much a big deal it is for you to see him progress as a professional athlete the way in which he has. And another University of Guelph product, like Mike O'Shea was. So it's good to see the Canadian talent finally getting a chance and taking advantage of that, too. Always a pleasure. Listen, I love talking with you. You've got such a rich history in this league. And as we get towards Grey Cup, I know that brings back some fond memories of some of the games we've talked about, and you've hoisted that trophy more than a few times. And a lot of guys are going to be jealous of you about that. I'm hoping that Keandre gets a chance to do that this year. We 2 years ago got kind of ripped off because of that last minute in the end zone and all the other stuff. Which, I'm opening wounds now that people don't want to hear.
Right.
Just like some of those past Grey Cups. But once you get into the race, as you know, as an athlete,
That's right.
if that's all you do. I mean, what happens after that is all up to you and your teammates, isn't it?
Yeah, just like the 2000 BC Lions. They were 8-10,
Yeah.
I believe, that year, and then got on a good run, and there you go, the Grey Cup champion.
Excellent. So much to talk about here, and hopefully we can have you back on later on to talk about some of the other exploits, of course, that you've had, and maybe some other stuff that's happening with Keandre at the same time. Adrion, thank you so much for being a guest on the program today. Really enjoy it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Adrion Smith, Grey Cup champion, CFL All-Star, and maybe someday, of course, if Keandre keeps progressing, they're going to say, "Isn't that Keandre Smith's dad?" Oh yeah. He played ball too at one time. Yeah, but that's Keandre's dad. Yeah. Take care. We'll see you around the stadium. Thanks again for this.
Have a good one. Take care.
Take care, Adrion Smith.